Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a little bit of a different one and I'm going to be talking about why I've quit being a pet sitter. So you may or may not know that I have been doing pet sitting and dog walking for about a year or so now, and I was doing this alongside also doing YouTube, and don't get me wrong, I did enjoy certain aspects of it, but I have decided that I don't really want to do it anymore, and I wanted to share the reasons why. So there's a lot of reasons why I don't really want to do it anymore, and I have got a big list which we are going to work through today, but don't let this completely put you off if you are thinking of being a pet sitter. But I do think it's important to see both sides and talk about the difficult sides of it, because it is definitely not just sitting and playing with puppies all day. So I'm really fortunate in the fact that YouTube and my online store is my full-time job. When I started doing the pet sitting and the dog walking, that was my main source of income. YouTube has kind of overtaken that, but I do think if I didn't have these other sources of income, I probably would have to just force myself to get on with it and carry on doing it. But because I don't have to do it, I'm not going to force myself. I am actually going to kind of slowly ease it out. I'm not completely stopping. Right here, right now, I will be doing a select few clients because I still have insurance until sometime next year, so I'm going to gradually start to slowly ease it out. I'm not completely quitting as the title might suggest, but I know in my heart that I don't really want to do it anymore, so I probably will be stopping at some point. So this list on my phone is something I wrote last year, I think. I started writing this last year when I was awake at like 3 AM, feeling really disheartened, really frustrated, and I've just written and added things onto here that I thought was worth mentioning. So these are in no particular order of like the most annoying thing to the least annoying thing. These are just things I've experienced throughout the year of doing pet sitting that I thought were worth mentioning, because maybe it will help you out if you are thinking of doing it, to try and avoid these situations. Now, the first situation that is incredibly frustrating is the money side of things and actually getting paid. There is going to be some people, unfortunately, that try to swindle you out of your money. No matter how much you try, these people will not want to pay for your services, and that is incredibly frustrating. So I did have a system in place to try to avoid this. I wanted contract signs and payment up front before doing any services, but people would still try and find a way around that. They'd say, oh, I've left the money on the side, or oh, I've left the money on the table. And you'd get there and there'd be no money in sight, they haven't bank transferred you, and obviously animal welfare comes into it, because you're there to care for the animal because the owners can't, and you can't just leave the animal not being cared for. So you end up doing your service, not being paid, going home and saying, hey, you didn't pay me, and they'll go, oh, we'll pay you next time. And if you're a fool like me in the early days, you'll go to the next time, expect the money, and it's not there again. So in that circumstance, it's probably better just to cut them off. So yeah, I've had that a few times where people have just not paid me for the services. I've done a couple of pet sits or dog walks and then just had to cut them off and say, I'm not coming anymore because you're not paying me for my services. And they say, oh no, I will pay you. And weeks come by, they don't pay you, you send them a letter, you threaten to take them to court, they don't do it. So that side of it is a whole mess. Hopefully if you're trying to do this yourself, you don't ever come across a person like that, but it is incredibly frustrating. Sticking to the money side of things, you will often get underpaid for your services as well, which is incredibly awkward. I think to do this you do have to be quite a forward, outgoing person, because sometimes I've turned up to people that want to pay cash, as I said, and just leave the cash out on the side, which is fine. People prefer to pay in cash or bank transfer. I didn't really mind which one they wanted, but you'd get there and say a service was like £10, they'd have left you £8 or £9, and they'd be like £1 short, which I always felt too awkward to text them and say, hey, you've underpaid me by £1, because it doesn't really seem worth it. But when a couple of people do that to you, it does add up, and you do end up being underpaid for your services. So that was another really frustrating thing that I've had happen a couple of times. So the next thing that is incredibly frustrating is just people being really disorganized when it comes to caring for their pets. I'm often awake anyway at like 1 AM, but sometimes I'd get phone calls or text messages from people at 1 AM asking for me to come and care for their cat or their dog at 10 AM the next morning, and I'm so underprepared at this point. I don't have a key, I don't have any idea how to care for the animal, and the guilt starts setting in that what if I say no and then they leave the animal for a couple of days? Obviously that is completely on the owner for being so disorganized, but you do get a lot of guilt not accepting last minute bookings when people just don't have their shit together. So yeah, that is incredibly frustrating, and it makes you feel guilty too. So you definitely have to have a lot of willpower and know what your availability is and feel like you can say no to people. I've also had a situation where someone's texted me and said they're already on a train to somewhere, so for example Manchester, and they've said, I've left the key under the doormat, could you possibly go in and look after the dogs or the cats for the next 2 days? And I've not had the availability. So that situation is incredibly distressing. I think in that situation I wasn't even like in the local area, I was away doing something else and they just expected me to be able to go in and care for their pet. And that situation is so distressing because then I know that that animal is alone for 2 days, 3 days, with the expectation that I would be able to go in and look after them without even agreeing to it. So that's distressing. Obviously again, that's not something that's my fault. That is completely on the owners for being really disorganized, but that is definitely upsetting. Another thing I didn't really like about it when I was at my most busiest is that most people want you to work weekends. Obviously they're not working and they're going away and doing things, and their pets need caring for, which most of the time wasn't a problem. I'm not the most busy person ever, but I'd be sat most of the week doing nothing, and then when it came to the weekend I was rushing around and super busy and I couldn't really see like family and friends that often, so I didn't really like that aspect of it. That does just come with a job. But be prepared if you want to be a pet sitter that most people are probably going to want you on the weekends. So the next thing that was really off-putting is just, again, owners not having the organisation and messing you around a lot when it comes to your time and just making basic mistakes. I've gone to look after a pet and about 10 minutes before I've been due to go and look after them, the owner has texted me and said, oh, I forgot to buy them food, or there's no food, could you go to the shop and buy them a bag of food or some tins of food? That's coming out of my pocket. Obviously they did repay me for that, I think, but also it's coming out of my time as well. A 15-minute visit, I charged for that 15 minutes, and looking back I probably should have charged them for the half an hour I spent going to the shop and picking up food for their pets, but I don't think I did because they'd already paid me. So again, it comes into the awkwardness of them having to then pay you and refusing to, and just expecting so much of you when they should already be prepared and have all of that stuff ready. Also, you will get people that are incredibly disorganised with their keys. With my regular customers, I will have their key all the time just because I do need that regular access to their house. But for one-off customers or people that I only do a couple of times a year, you do have to go and pick up their key or preferably have them drop the key off to you. So I've had a couple of situations where I've had to go on a wild goose chase looking for keys to properties once the owners are already left and they're either out of the country or very, very far away. They've not dropped the key off, I've not been told to come and pick the key up, and then their animal is then left alone by themselves, and I've been calling them and texting them like, hello, where's the key? And they've been like, oh, it's at my sister's, uncle's, brother's house, you need to go and pick it up. So then I'm driving around, again, wasting my time that I'm not being paid for. I get to the address they've told me to pick the key up from. No one's answered the door, I'm not entirely sure where the key is, and I'm just so conscious that animal is sat, probably with its legs crossed, really needing the toilet, and not getting the care that it really needs. So there seems to be a common theme here with most of the problems I have with being a pet sitter, being down to people just not having good organisation and just ultimately wasting my time, because when it comes down to it, any time I'm spent running around trying to find things, being confused, not having clear instructions, takes away from time I could be spending with your pet. So if you're watching this and you do need to get a pet sitter in the future, be really helpful, lay everything out for them, write them a big list if you have to, it definitely helps a lot. So the next one is a weird one. I've heard of other pet sitters having cameras watching them whilst they don't know, and I think it's fine to have cameras in your home to monitor your pets and possibly monitor when other people are interacting with your pets. Please just let them know. It's incredibly creepy to watch people without them knowing. I've never had this happen that I know of, but I have had people, so family members, having access to the house when I've not been told that they have access, and it's really creepy and really confusing because things either go missing or get moved, and it's just really weird. So I have had a situation where the owner itself has been really organised, had all of the food laid out and everything, where you can see it and where you know you can get to it, and then they've had a family member come into the house as well, which just confused me because if you're hiring me to care for your pets, could you not just get the family member to look after them? But anyway, they've had a family member have access to the house. I've not known, I've not been told, and then I've gone in and say, for example, the food that I need to feed them is completely missing and completely gone. and I just have no idea where it is. So sometimes I feel like this is a test. I feel like the family member doesn't entirely trust their decision to hire a pet sitter, and then they're trying to test you by hiding things. So I've had this happen, and say a 15-minute visit, which again I'm only being paid for those 15 minutes. I've then spent 30 minutes looking around the house, which I don't really like going into rooms I'm not meant to or don't have a need to, or going into cupboards and stuff. But if you're hiding food somewhere in the house and I have to find it, obviously I have to feed that pet, then I do have to go looking for it. So I've spent 30 minutes or so looking for the thing this family member has hidden, and also 30 minutes trying to contact the owner like, hey, I'm not too sure where this has gone or this has gone. Do you have a reason why it's gone missing? Have you come home early? And they've been like, oh no, my elderly dad, he's been coming in every day, and he must have moved it because he has OCD or something. And that's really weird. It's really frustrating. It does definitely feel like a weird type of test, which I didn't really like. So another thing which is probably more common with dog walkers is owners underselling their pets' behavioural issues. So maybe they'll tell you, oh, my dog sometimes barks at other dogs on a walk, when really they're snapping, lunging, growling at other dogs. They're incredibly dog aggressive, and they don't really tell you the full truth about that, and that can often result in the dog or the dog walker getting injured, which is not helpful for anyone in the situation. Just be honest, we can adapt our walks. Possibly we might tone you down if we don't feel like we're confident enough or experienced enough with aggressive dogs, but please just be honest in these situations, because I've often had people underselling their behavioural issues and then being really surprised when I turn up to walk them or visit them. There's also just a lot of common things when it comes to working by yourself. You are often by yourself. Obviously you are with animals, which is my preferred interaction. I'm not the biggest fan of people, but I do lack human interaction, which I didn't think I'd miss too much, but I definitely miss kind of bouncing off other people. You do have to make a lot of quick decisions by yourself, which if you're that kind of person, that is kind of beneficial to you, working by yourself and having to think on your feet. But for a lot of people, I think might struggle with that, and I did kind of struggle with the lack of human interaction. I didn't expect to, but it did start to grate on me a little bit, that every day I was just by myself, working by myself, and I did kind of miss that human interaction. Also, you will get people that expect you to train their pets for you. If I was a dog trainer, I would be getting paid so much more than I would just doing pet sitting and dog walking, because dog trainers have a level of experience. Obviously, I know basic dog training, and I'm more than happy to do so if I can work with that dog regularly, but some people expect you to visit their dog once a week and fully train them in obedience, and that's just not possible if they're not also putting the work in. I'm more than happy if they are working on a certain command, or they want their dog to not do something, to also work on their training with them. But some people, I think, expect you to come in and just train your dog for them, which is not going to happen. We're paid to do certain stuff, and we're not a dog trainer. Again, sticking on the theme of badly behaving pets and owners not training their pets properly, I've had a lot of experiences with untrained or badly trained dogs that it just makes it difficult to do your job when you enter the house. And obviously if I'm going there once a month or a couple of times a year, it makes it incredibly difficult to add any training into that, because anything I do on that one visit is not going to be replicated by the owners to stop it happening the next time. So I've had a couple of experiences where I've gone in. The dogs aren't necessarily aggressive, they're just very, very excited. And I've had a lot of clothes physically ripped off me. I've had leggings with holes ripped in the back, and then I've had to walk home with my butt hanging out of my leggings. I have pictures of this, but I'm not going to put it in. But I've definitely had a lot of clothes ripped off me from overexcitable, untrained dogs, which is frustrating because, again, I then have to spend money replacing those clothes, and it just makes it so difficult to do your job when dogs are jumping at you, biting you, and you can't really implement any sort of training because the owners aren't also doing the same. So I do find there's often a lack of communication between the owner and the pet sitter. They leave out certain details, and when you get there, you're just expected to problem solve, which is fine. Certain situations I'm pretty good at thinking on my feet and problem solving, but when you've got like 5 dogs jumping at you, ripping your clothes, it's not an ideal situation for anyone to be in, and you just have to try to think how to navigate the situation, and it's just a mess. So that's definitely something that put me off. It's not the biggest thing. Definitely like the money situation and just dealing with the owners. I don't mind dealing with the dogs and the cats and the other animals that have behavioural issues because it's not their fault. They're definitely the easiest part of the job. Something that's also really difficult to deal with is overlooking certain care problems, so not necessarily anything that's neglect. If there was a serious case of neglect, I would have to report that and do something about it, but most cases it's just feeding bad food, not feeding enough food, not really providing them with enough water sources or something, just certain aspects of their care. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head, but there's definitely things that have bothered me over the time of looking after people's pets, that you're just there to care for them, you're not there to criticise them or give them judgment or try to control the way they care for their pets. That's their decision. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you can't do too much about it unless it's really serious, so that can be hard sometimes when you know better and you know that it's not the best way to care for them. You do sometimes have to overlook that. And I'm not talking anything serious that would be really harmful to them, I'm just talking like two cats sharing the same litter tray. Obviously, if you know anything about keeping house cats should really have multiple litter trays between them. And also I've had people that feed their house cats in one bowl, so the cats are like fighting over the bowl, and in that situation I think I did mention it to the owner, but I tried to do it in the nicest way possible, and I've looked around for other sources of things I could put the food in, but ultimately that is again their decision of how they care for their cats, and it can be incredibly frustrating keeping your mouth shut. So I think for me, one of the biggest reasons, besides the owners and the animals themselves, why I don't really want to do pet sitting anymore is the fact that I can't really do it because it is a very overpopulated industry. More and more people are popping up pretty much every single week in my local area doing pet sitting and offering pet sitting, and you don't really need any formal qualifications to do it. Obviously I have a degree in zoology, which was heavily behavioural based, which a lot of people have actually mentioned when I put it on my website that that's why they picked me, but a lot of people have just converted from doing hairdressing and decided to be a dog walker or a pet sitter, which is fine, all power to them, but it does make it incredibly difficult for pre-existing people doing the pet sitting and the dog walking because they're then taking their clients, or it makes the competition a lot harder. So when I started, I'd only just moved to the area recently. I didn't know anyone, I wasn't even familiar with the area, all I had was my boyfriend. I think a lot of people that start and they've lived somewhere for like 10 years or something, they have the upper hand because they've got friends, family that can recommend them to people, and that's how they start to get their clients. I had to really push myself and put myself out there and sell myself to people to get clients, so that can be quite tough, especially with new people starting all the time that maybe they've come from a totally unrelated background and you'd probably think they wouldn't get clients straight away, but because they have that friend and family recommendation, they build up their client base pretty quick, so that's definitely tough if you don't know anyone and you're new to an area. So I live in quite a small town. I think our population is about 10,000 or so people, which sounds like a lot, but when you've got 20 to 30 pet sitters and dog walkers working in the one town, the competition is pretty high, especially with people popping up all of the time. So I was finding you had to fight really hard to get clients and be better than the other people in the area, which I just didn't really feel like fighting that anymore. It was a lot of effort trying to get a new client, so more power to them trying to get their clients, all of the new businesses that have started up, but it was just getting a lot hard with all of the new people starting up. There's just far too many dog walkers and pet sitters in my tiny town, so I was just not getting any new clients and I just couldn't really be bothered to fight for it anymore. On a similar note to having to work a lot of weekends, you also have to work a lot of holidays, which is something to consider if you want to open yourself up to doing that. I've been asked to do Easter, which is fine, I don't really celebrate Easter, but also Christmas. I've had a couple of people ask me if I could care for their pets on Christmas Day whilst they're away seeing family. Obviously I had to turn that down because my family do live a little bit of a way away, so I had to go and see them for Christmas, but people are going to want you to work holidays, and if you're someone that really enjoys having nothing to do on the holidays, then you're in for a shock. On a similar topic to holidays, also having sick days is very, very difficult. You pretty much can't really take a sick day, and as someone with a lot of chronic health issues, I found this incredibly difficult because I never know how I'm going to feel tomorrow. It pretty much depends on when I wake up, if I'm going to have a migraine or something. So that was very, very difficult because those animals rely on you. You can't really cancel last minute. Often that person is at work or they've already gone on holiday, and you can't just cancel and leave those pets by themselves. So you really do have to push through it. There was one situation where last year Badger, my rat, died, and I was very upset by the situation. I'd been pretty much crying myself to sleep all night, and that triggered a migraine the next day, but I was fully booked that day to care for cats and dogs. I just had to push myself and go and do it, and I was walking about 3 dogs at once, and I felt so ill. I couldn't really see much. Probably not the safest situation, but I just had to because I didn't have anyone else to care for them, which in this situation it definitely pays to befriend other dog walkers and pet sitters, to have people that could possibly cover for you in this situation. This was pretty early on in my experience where I didn't really have anyone like that. So I was walking these dogs and I was pretty much just holding them, and because my migraine was at that point, I was like walking the dogs, throwing up at the same time, which is not the best image to have for yourself as a business, but I was just so unwell, but I had to keep on walking them and caring for them because I didn't have anyone else. So the last thing, which is definitely not one of the reasons why I'm quitting, but it is definitely a downside to the job, and that is growing so attached to the pets you care for, caring for them week in, week out, and then suddenly circumstances change. Either they don't need you anymore or they're moving away, and you don't really get to say goodbye to all of the pets in that situation. You just suddenly stop caring for them, which is so hard. I have such a bond with some of my regular customers' pets, and I do really miss them at the moment. I'm not able to see them. A lot of people during lockdown have either changed jobs and they're working from home permanently, or they've actually moved away, which is super sad. I miss every single one of my regular customers, so that's definitely a downside to the job, is growing so attached to the pets, and then suddenly one day you can't see them anymore. So yeah, that is pretty much it for my big list of things that I don't like about being a pet sitter. I could dig deep in my brain and find a couple more to add to the list, but obviously there's so many benefits of doing it as well. It is a really nice job. When you get good customers that are organised, the pets don't have major behavioural issues, and you just have a good bond with the owners and also the pets, so there's definitely good benefits to it. Now, this isn't to say that I won't ever do pet sitting again in the future. Possibly if I'm in a different mindset and I'm not working on too many other things, I might go back to doing it in the future, but for now I am trying to ease myself out of it. I do have insurance for the next year or so, and I'm just going to be doing people that I'm familiar with, and I'm happy to do their pets and we have a good relationship. I'm not really going to be trying to take on any new clients, and I will be trying to phase it out a bit. Obviously, with the whole lockdown situation in the UK, that pretty much killed my pet sitting business anyway, because I wasn't able to go into people's houses. So now is pretty much the perfect time to say that I'm kind of stopping doing it, and this has been something I've been thinking about for a while. So I do still really want to work directly with animals on a regular basis. Obviously I have my own pets, but I do really enjoy working directly with animals, and I have been applying to a couple of other jobs. I don't really need to do them, I don't really have to have that source of income, but I just really want to work directly with animals on a regular basis. I am also going to be trying to do some volunteering, which should be really good, but I just want to have that direct contact and work with animals on a regular basis. I did apply to a couple of vet technician jobs that would then go on to training to be a vet nurse, but I didn't have much luck with that. There's not too many vets in my local area really accepting new people at the moment, so possibly in the future if something comes up I will try to do something like that, but for now it's just me sat here on YouTube selling things on my online store, which I'm perfectly happy with. So I hope this video was insightful to you if you're thinking of becoming a pet sitter. Please don't let this put you off. I do think it's one of those things you have to try yourself and work through whether it's going to be the right thing for you. You can't really predict whether these things are going to happen or not, and I definitely didn't predict these things would happen to me. I did so much research on the pros and cons of being a pet sitter before I tried it, and still all of these things surprised me. So I do think give it a go. You might have some really amazing customers. I've definitely got so many customers that I get on with so well. It's just a couple of the bad eggs in the bunch that do dampen the experience a little bit, but you might not have any of them crop up, and it might just be the best thing for you. So definitely if you are thinking of doing it, give it a try, because there's definitely a lot of pros to it. These are just some of the cons. And of course don't forget to subscribe if you're not already to see any more pet related videos from me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!